I want to share a more long-term story that occurred over a period of a year of my school career. My 8th grade year, to be exact. I'd like to preface this by saying that I'm a male and bisexual, as well as only being 13 years old when this started. So some of the decisions that I made throughout this whole thing were pretty stupid on my part. Let's travel back in time to when my troubles first started. The beginning of 8th grade. The year prepping me for what was to come in my high school career. I was really excited for this year, especially when I found out that there was a new kid that was joining my class. We'll call him Liam. Liam was a tall, skinny 15-year-old boy with black curly hair and blue eyes. He also happened to enjoy the same interests that I had at the time. Gorillas, Steven Universe, drawing, all that jazz. As a hormone-filled 13-year-old who had just discovered his sexuality, I was immediately head over heels for him. But due to the fact that I went to a religious school, I knew I couldn't openly date him without getting into deep trouble. I had to suppress my feelings for him, which turned out to be a massive bullet I dodged. I became friends with Liam, and we talked just about every day we got the chance. During lunch, during class, even at home on Instagram. He was perfect for me. He was so easy to talk to, he was hilarious, and just an all-around down-to-earth guy. Well, about 2 weeks after 8th grade, we were scheduled to go on a field trip, and Liam sat next to me on the bus. This was when it all really started. When his veil on who he really was began to slowly lift. The trip was a 3-hour journey to a museum, and I thought it would be great because of who I could get to spend my time with. The first half hour or so was pretty great. We did our usual session of talking and joking with each other, when all of a sudden he began to stroke my knees. I have very sensitive knees, so it tickled. Laughing, I told him to stop because it tickled so bad. He then moved his hand up to my thigh and rubbed that instead. Part of me was a bit uncomfortable with this, but at the same time, I was a dumb 13-year-old that really liked this boy, and I wanted him to like me back. So I chose not to say anything or move seats. He did the same thing when we were going back to the school after the trip. I really do regret not saying anything because maybe that could have saved me from a year of hell from this guy if I did. Cut to around 3 weeks after this experience. Liam and I are chilling in the gym before PE. He asked me to hold his phone as his shorts didn't have pockets. I happily obliged and then stuck my phone in my pocket. During our lap runs, I used to use the restroom, so I excused myself to the restroom to do my business. While inside, I then remembered that I had Liam's phone, and I felt a little nosy, so I decided to snoop to see what juicy secrets I could find out about my crush. He didn't have a password, so it was pretty easy to access whatever I wanted. I decided to look in his gallery, and what I found took me aback. There were around 250 pictures of me in his camera roll. All of them just of me. In class, during the trip, me and him, etc. Some that I had known he had taken, and others I didn't. I thought this was really creepy, but at the same time, stupid 13-year-old me was happy that Liam liked me enough to be the center of his photography. So, like his creepy actions before, I brushed this off. As the weeks went on, I noticed that Liam not only liked me, but he was becoming obsessed with me. It started off with me noticing small things, like he wore the same color and brand of shoes I wore, and then it turned into more specific things like t-shirts with specific brands and characters that I wore. I was more so flattered than creeped out at his actions, and brushed them off yet again. It was in December of 2016 when I finally realized that what he was doing was really creepy and disturbing. It was after school, and my mother was running late, so Liam and I were chilling in one of the empty classrooms waiting on our parents. Liam's mother always worked a little late, so he always left school a little bit later than everyone else. I was sitting in the front of the classroom and Liam sat in the back. He had sat his bag down next to the classroom door, and since I was closer to the bag, he asked me to get a book from his bag. I said sure, and walked over towards the bag. As I bent over to reach inside the bag, Liam walked behind me and then grabbed my butt with both of his hands. Startled, I then turned around and asked him what he was doing. and he simply said that he was just goofing around and wanted to mess with me. I had blown everything else off before, the pictures and touching my legs, but I knew that gripping my butt like that was not okay. I was now uncomfortable, and I decided that I didn't want to be in there with him anymore after that, and I decided to leave. He didn't follow me out and just sat with a blank face after I left the classroom. I reported what he did to the principal on the way out, but he didn't believe me, saying that I was just trying to start trouble, but that he would still talk to him about it. So yeah, really great school system we had. The very next day, I walked into classroom as usual, and Liam was sitting in the back, saving his usual spot next to him for me, but he had a cold, dead look in his eyes when he stared at me. I reluctantly sat down next to him and gave him a monotone, "Hey," but he said nothing in return. A few minutes go by in silence between us, other than the other kids having their own conversations or doing their own thing, when Liam leans over and whispers to me. What he whispered to me made my blood freeze, and they're words that I'll never forget.
"So you really tried to report me? I thought we had something. I'm going to make your life a living hell."
And make my life hell, he surely did. Every day for weeks on end, he would find a way to get to me and do whatever he wanted. He would manage to find times when I was alone and touch me, hurt me, or even worse. Even when crowded in the halls, he would do things like give a subtle butt grab when no one could see. It got so bad that I stopped going to the bathroom at all during school hours. I tried to report him again, but no one would believe me, saying he's a great student and wouldn't dare to do something like this. I literally came home every single day with a bruise and mental scarring, but I never told my parents in fear of them just automatically thinking that I'm doing it for attention. One time while I went to my locker, I then opened it and a note fell out. I picked it up and opened it. Its contents made me physically ill. It was a typed letter from Liam detailing all of the disgusting and heinous acts that he wanted to do to me. I tried to show it to the principal, believing that the letter would prove what Liam had done, but he said since the letter had been typed out and wasn't signed by Liam, there was no proof that Liam had typed it, and even suggested that I was the one who typed it in an attempt to frame Liam for something he didn't do. Literally all of my efforts to stop him were futile. Now, I wasn't a violent person, so fighting him wasn't an option for me. Liam was a psychopathic monster, but he was smart. He managed to create a facade that he only broke when tormenting me. He was a star student as well as a rather popular guy in our class. Compare that to me, an antisocial and somewhat rude and unpopular guy. He basically had the perfect target. Around February of 2017, my history teacher was fired for a different scandal involving voyeurism that I had no involvement with, and was replaced by a new teacher who I'll refer to as Miss Bennett. Miss Bennett was a wonderful young woman who managed to make her teaching fun and interesting, and was the only person who got me through this really tough time with Liam. Miss Bennett took a liking to me because of my diligence and hard work that I did during the class. Miss Bennett noticed that I always looked tired and or sad whenever I walked by when leaving. So one day as class ended, she pulled me aside and asked me why I always looked tired and sad during class. I was rather hesitant to say anything because I was so worried that, just like everyone else, she wouldn't believe me. But she seemed to genuinely care enough about me if she pulled me aside to privately talk to me, so I decided to tell her everything. What had happened over the year, how it all started, and how it is now. She just stared at me, eyes wide and jaw dropped, listening to all of the abuse this monster had given me and how the school did nothing about it. She gave me a warm hug and apologized profusely for what had happened to me, and said that somehow something would be done to stop it. I told her that I didn't want her to say anything to the higher-ups because I knew she could get in trouble, because I knew Liam would just manipulate the situation to his favor. She said to not worry and that she wouldn't allow me to be hurt anymore. I left that classroom feeling happy for the first time in a really long time, knowing that somebody finally believes me for what he did to me. I felt like I had a sort of guardian angel now. Miss Bennett kept her word on keeping me safe as she kept a close eye on me between classes, always dismissing her classes 5 minutes in advance so she could walk close to my classroom and keep an eye close on me as I walked through the halls. Liam caught on to this and stopped touching me as he noticed Miss Bennett was always eyeing him and I through the hall. I went to Miss Bennett's room after school whenever my mother was late so that Liam couldn't touch or harm me after school either. I thought it was all over, but there was one last time that Liam had tried to commit his sinister acts. It was around the end of April and Liam hadn't attacked me or touched me since February, and I was resting easy, knowing that Miss Bennett was protecting me from his dirty, vile clutches. I was sitting in her classroom after school. I strangely didn't see Liam at all, even though he was at school earlier, so I figured he checked out early. Miss Bennett said she needed to run and collect copies of a test from the teacher's lounge, which was all the way on the other side of the school from the room we were in. After she had left, I needed to use the restroom, which was in the opposite direction of the teacher's lounge. I started walking to the restroom, passing all of the empty classrooms on either side of me, when I thought I heard footsteps behind me. Still a bit nervous about Liam, I then turned around and saw nobody in sight. I figured that my mind was just playing tricks on me, so I walked another 50 feet to the restroom and used the stall. While inside, I heard the door to the restroom then open, so I figured it was just another teacher staying late needing to use it. But then the light switched off. The power didn't go out, it was switched off because I heard the light switch click. I was petrified as I sat in total blackness, but this didn't even compare to what happened next. I then heard the voice of Liam say in a singy-songy voice,
"Come on out."
I was on the verge of tears at this point, but dared not to make a sound as I heard him slowly walking through the bathroom. I was on the very last stall at the end, and to my horror, he began checking the stalls, trying to find me. After finally snapping out of my frozen fear, I then prepared for him to open the door to my stall. He knew that I was in the last stall, laughing and taunting me while standing on the other side of the stall door, which was his biggest mistake. I bowed my legs back, and as soon as he opened the door, I then kicked the door back in his face with full force. I heard him yell in pain and fall backward from the impact. I took this time to pull up my pants and run out of the restroom, with him following close behind. As soon as I burst out of the restroom, Liam then burst out right behind me and tackled me to the floor. Liam had a large pocket knife in his hand and had successfully slashed me a few times on my arm and hands. I heard Miss Bennett then yell at him to get off of me, and she then ran over to tackle Liam to the ground, wrestling the knife out of his hand. At this point, the other teachers who hadn't left the building had come outside to see what the commotion was. Miss Bennett was then screaming for all of the teachers to call 911 while I was laying on the hallway floor sobbing profusely and my arms in a bloody mess. The police then came and arrested Liam, and I was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. My parents were notified and they showed up at the hospital in hysterics over what had happened to me. After my wounds were stitched up and I rested for a while, my parents came in hugging me asking what happened. So I then explained to them what had been going on with me the entire past school year. They were both crying and apologizing profusely for not noticing that something was wrong sooner. I also got a written apology from the school principal basically asking me not to sue, but I didn't care about that anymore. The important thing here was that this sick freak was finally caught and he couldn't harm me anymore or anyone else. As for Liam, he was sent to some kind of mental institution, and as far as I know, he's still there to this day. I'm now 16 years old and changed forever because of what that monster put me through. I've taken jujitsu, as well as always carrying a pocket knife with me wherever I go. I honestly consider Miss Bennett a savior, because if it weren't for her, I most likely wouldn't be alive or would have continued to endure Liam's torture. For what she did to me, I'll always be thankful for her. And Liam, for your sake, I really hope I never have to see your face ever again. About 10 years ago, I was fresh out of college and trying to figure out what was next for me. I went to college on an athletic scholarship, and I was just as interested in enjoying my college experience as I was in completing it. I ended up with a communications degree, average grades, and really no experience. I was working as a door host, in other words, a bouncer, at a small bar/lounge in a casino. I worked at said bar Wednesday to Sunday from around 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. My job was to greet people coming in, check IDs, break up fights, and remove people who got out of hand while maintaining a professional and friendly manner. There was a man that started coming into the bar on the off nights, Wednesday or Thursday when it was slow. He would come in both nights 1 week, then not come in again for 3 weeks or so, and he would do the same thing again always on the off nights. Usually he would talk to me a couple times throughout the night whenever he was there, just normal small talk. It was never awkward. He was always well dressed in a suit or at least a button-up shirt and some slacks. He was clean cut, had athletic build, no visible tattoos or piercings, and a shaved head. I'm not into men, but I would guess he was a good-looking man in his late 30s. Well, the last night that I saw him, the conversation was a little bit different than usual. He came in on an off night just like normal, and eventually came up to talk to me by the door. The conversation started off normal, but eventually he asked me if I enjoyed what I did at the bar. I responded with the typical, "Oh, it's not that bad. It's mostly easy," dissembling that I felt was polite conversation. He then asked me how long I planned to be a bouncer and asked if I thought I made enough money, and eventually dragged out of me that no, I didn't particularly enjoy being a bouncer, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my future. At this point, he looked me straight in the face and then said,
"Well, you could kill people."
While maintaining our eye contact, I paused and waited for some type of joke or smile or something that would turn into his failed attempt at a joke. Nope, nothing. He seemed 100% serious with what he was saying. There was no smile, no joke, nothing but him staring at me and just waiting for me to respond. At this point, I tried to tell him the first thing that came to my mind. "I'm pretty sure I don't have the skill set for what you're suggesting." He then said,
"Yeah, but you could learn all that. Think about it. You could travel, work once or twice a month, and get paid really, really well."
While strangely at that point in my life it was an intriguing idea, I immediately thought of some sort of police setup and all the shadowy Hitman handler betrayal I've seen in every Hitman movie I've ever seen. So I then told him, "No, I don't think that's for me." Then he just said,
"Well, okay,"
and left. I worked there for another year, and I never saw him ever again. Whether it was some kind of setup, or he actually was a hitman trying to hire me, it's still one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. I am currently on a vacation in Mexico with my family. The house where we are staying is right on the beach, and it is very tranquil and scenic. My parents are in a main house with a kitchen and a living room, while my sister and I are in a second building with one bed and a bathroom. There's a small house before ours where the groundskeeper and her roughly 14 to 16-year-old son live. My sister and I went to sleep around midnight. I was dead asleep, but at 4 a.m. I woke up because I thought I felt something on my leg. Tired and confused, I opened my eyes. Kneeling next to me on the ground, staring at me, was the groundskeeper's son. Right after noticing him, I started making some weird noises. The shock was overwhelming. I had just woken up from a really deep sleep, and for some reason I started slapping him on the back of the neck. He stood up and then started speaking Spanish very rapidly. Now, I hardly know any Spanish, so I just pointed towards the door, loudly saying, "Get out," and "No comprende" repeatedly. He eventually walked out after about a minute of yelling. My parents had heard my voice, and when they walked out of their house, they saw him standing outside of our door. His mother heard the commotion as well, and my sister then got up to explain what had happened, being the only one who speaks Spanish fairly well in our family. His mother apologized and they went back to their house together. I asked my sister what he was saying when he was standing by our bed next to me, but she said that because he was speaking so quickly and she was just waking up, she didn't really understand him. This happened last night, which was only our second night there. He could have been watching us the night before as well, and the thought of that absolutely terrifies me. I'm pretty sure I locked the door, but I know that his mother has a key. My sister and I are going to put glass bottles in front of the door tonight to alert us if anyone tries to get in again. If anybody has any suggestions on what we can do, they would be greatly appreciated. The service here is terrible, and I don't know if this will post. I still have 5 more nights here, and I know I'll probably see him again. Creepy little teenage boy watching me while I sleep. Please don't freaking come into my room again. Update. My parents contacted the owners of the house, who were very understanding and concerned. They said that they would have sliding locks installed on the inside of our door. For those in the comments mentioning windows, they're just screens and shutters, so there's no possible way for anyone to enter through them. Additionally, to address the sleepwalking theories, my mother has said that he knocked on their door approximately an hour earlier asking if he could rake the sand on the beach. I don't really know much about sleepwalking, but I do know that you can't form coherent sentences while doing so. Thank you for your ideas and concerns. They're all very much appreciated. Update number 2. The homeowners contacted the groundskeepers, and apparently it was their 15-year-old son who was visiting. They said that he has left and will not be allowed back. I don't think I'll be updating anymore because at the moment I feel that this situation is finally resolved. This experience was genuinely unsettling and will probably stay with me for a long time. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And remember, if you have your own personal scary story that you'd like to send to me with me to narrate on my channel, be sure to submit it directly to my website at southerncannibal.com. And before we bring this video to a close, I just want to shout out all of my $5 or more patrons, as well as my $3 or more patrons featured on screen. Shout out to Angela G, Babe Lincoln, Beryl S, Kate E, Katrina T, Celeste S, Heather B, Howard R, Joseph F, Lori J, Matthew B, Michael G, Steph L, Beth A, Tammy S, Too Etchy For You, Victor R, and Ellie S. Thank all of you so much for supporting me on Patreon. And if any of you would like to join these awesome people and also become a patron, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/southerncannibal. Thank you everyone, and have a good one. And remember to always stay on.